Oven versus air fryer. Which one's better? Today we're gonna find out. Roll it! Hello Internet! Welcome to Food Theory, the show that's great no matter how you bake. And today we're diving into an age-old question, an ancient war that goes as far back as when the air fryer was invented. Because on one side, we have a traditional, tried and true appliance in every kitchen across the world, the oven. And on the other side, we have the newcomer that's been asserting its dominance since it stepped onto the scene, and that is the air fryer. And some people have very strong opinions on both, right? Some people are all team air fryer, and some people are all team oven. But what I'm curious about is the pros and cons of both. How can you optimize your own cooking to best use both of these appliances? And what differences do you get cooking in an air fryer versus an oven?
That's right, what we're looking at today isn't a competition between these two. After all, they each have their place in the kitchen. What we're trying to see is exactly what that place is. How to best optimize your cooking with the two appliances. Because I'm someone that's gotten used to using them for different things without putting much thought into it. Veggies, stick them in the oven. A nice crispy potato in the air fryer. But what if I should flip them, right? So the idea behind the 3 meals we'll be cooking is to see when and how to use the oven or air fryer. For meal number 1, I've also given myself an extra challenge of cooking both meals at the same time in each appliance to see if the oven can keep up with the air fryer. After all, one of the big appeals of the air fryer is that it's so much faster than a traditional oven. That might be true for just one component, but is it still true when you're trying to make a whole dish?
Okay, so I have everything ready in front of me and my phone timer ready to start. I'm going to start preheating the oven and preheating the air fryer and get things rolling. There it is. So the air fryer already has the potato in it for about 25 minutes at 425. The oven is preheating to 425 right now, and I'm starting the clock. Now we play the waiting game.
Now, ovens are fairly universal. Pretty much every kitchen everywhere has an oven. Don't have to tell you what they are, probably. Air fryers are a bit newer, but have been around longer than people think. The technology was invented in 2005 by a Dutch inventor, I'm so sorry I'm about to butcher this, van der Waay. But it wasn't until 2016 that its popularity started to rise. And then in 2020, everyone stayed at home learning how to make bread and fry things without oil, and it became the must-have that it is today. Sales rose by almost 80% in the US from 2020 to 2021, and they're only going up. So it's clear that air fryers are here to stay. So if we're gonna have both of them in our kitchens, we need to know exactly how they both work. The oven is the culinary equivalent of a Volvo. Safe, reliable, and nobody cares if you have one. It uses 2 ways to heat up your food: radiant heat and convection. Radiant heat occurs by cranking up some metal coils that blast that heat into the chamber. That heat warms the air, the walls, and eventually your food in the kind of slow, meditative way that makes you question every life choice between preheat and dinner's ready. Speaking of dinner, now's a perfect time to thank our sponsor for today's video, Tyer. You may notice that super cool UFO looking thing that I'm using as my air fryer. That is the Dome 2 air fryer. It's got 360 heating technology that helps your food come out way better. With the Dome 2, the dual heating warms up your food from the top and bottom for an even cook, especially with the dual temperature sensors making it perfect for our meal cooking, making anything and everything. And the phrase "let him cook" has never been more accurate because you can let the Dome 2 cook. Let me tell you, it's got functions for days. Not just for foods like pizza, steaks, fries, or wings, but you can bake, grill, toast, griddle, broil, and even dehydrate your foods to perfection. The best part, when you've ate and left no crumbs, your Dome won't either. It has a self-cleaning function that removes all the grease and grime from the top. That makes it a breeze to clean so that it doesn't end up looking like that grimy pizza place's kitchen. I haven't been able to stop using this thing since I got it and have been throwing everything I can in it for some quick and easy cooking. And if you use my code in the description box below, you'll get 15% off when you buy your Dome 2. So thank you, Tyer, for sponsoring today's video, and let's keep seeing how it all works. Now, most ovens these days use convection in addition to radiant heat. In the old school ovens without a fan, hot air just floats. It rises to the top, cool air sinks to the bottom, and your food sits there hoping for the best. This leads to hot and cold spots, uneven browning, and the classic burnt on top, raw in the middle experience we all pretend didn't happen. Convection fixes this by actively blowing hot air all around your food, which does 2 magical things. It evens out heat distribution and leads to faster cooking. Think of it like giving your food a group hug of heat from all sides. Every surface of your dish gets hit with the same temperature at the same time, which means fewer raw centers and fewer burnt burnt edges. And on the subject of hot edges, let's check back in on the potato, shall we?
That is crisp. All right, so we're gonna, oh my God, hot potato. Oh, hot potato. I get it now.
That's one potato down, and moving on to the broccoli for the air fryer, all while the oven potato has barely been put in. From a time perspective, things don't look good for the oven. Back in the oven, because the heat is moving, it transfers energy to your food more efficiently. This shaves off around 25% of your cooking time, give or take. You get dinner faster, which means more time for eating and less time doing laps around your kitchen, turning your oven light on every 2 minutes. Now, the air fryer, that thing showed up like a hot influencer at a cooking convention and said, "Move over, boomers. I cook crispy stuff and I don't need your oil or your permission." It may seem like a magical thing, but it's basically a mini convection oven, except smaller, louder, and way sleeker. Here's what happens. There's a heating coil up top and a turbofan underneath it that blasts scorching air down. That hot air hits your food from all angles, super fast, super aggressive, like Gordon Ramsay yelling inside of a salad spinner. Because the chamber is tiny, the heat has nowhere else to go, which means your food cooks way faster than in a regular oven and gets that crispy golden finish. Unfortunately, if you leave it unattended for even just a few seconds, your broccoli will go from just right to, oh, this was cooked on the surface of the sun. Now, the issue with things like broccoli is that you need a good amount of oil to protect it from the harsh environment of the mini sun. Oil acts as a heat conductor, helping the broccoli to cook evenly and brown without burning. Without it, or with too little, like in this case, the broccoli's high water content can lead to steaming and burning rather than crisping. The steak, on the other hand, did well with the moisture being removed quickly. It provided an amazing sear like one you'd get cooking in a pan. When it came to the oven, cooking everything at the same time was definitely a time saver and allowed for the full meal to be cooked in the same amount of time as the air fryer. So it is possible. That said, not being able to give each component the ideal temperature or oven rack placement led to the broccoli steaming a bit more than crisping and the steak having slightly less color than the air fryer. And remember, less color means less flavor. But the more surprising thing to me was that the oven-cooked steak was in for less total time, but ended up overcooking. This is because we had to have the temperature higher for the potato and veggies, which worked great for that, but led to a medium well finish in the steak. So what did we learn with meal number 1? The oven is great for large capacity cooking. Heck, the potato barely fit in the air fryer. If you're trying to cook up some bigger items, the oven is there for you. That said, you have to give each component the TLC it deserves, meaning the right temperature and rack placement, or you'll be chewing on rubber. For the air fryer, you also have to be pretty attentive because just a few seconds extra will have some of your veggies burnt if you didn't coat them in enough oil. For meal number 2, we're switching it up. This time around, there's no time component. By and large, the air fryer will be faster if you want to cook everything correctly. But now we're zooming in and focusing on the differences when you cook the components in their ideal temperature environments. The protein this time around is pork, and we're swapping the regular potato for a sweet potato and the broccoli for carrots. Now, it was everything in me not to zhuzh up this dish. You know, honey roast the carrots, a nice little rub for the pork, but we're looking at fundamentals here.
So in the air fryer, we're gonna go 380 degrees for 12 minutes, flipping halfway through. So once again, we're just gonna put them straight on to the basket. About halfway through, 6 minutes in, we're gonna flip. Now for both of these, we wanna get to an internal temperature of 145 degrees Fahrenheit. And this time around, we will be checking for that. So I'll see you back here in a second. Get out of my kitchen!
Let's talk about that famous Maillard reaction for a minute, because I've mentioned it a few times now, and we've talked about it before, but what is it really? You probably know by now it's the reason steaks and other proteins get that nice brown sear that every food tuber loves to show off. What's really happening is the sugars and amino acids on the surface of the food are breaking down and rearranging into something called an amidori compound. And this is where it gets messy, in a beautiful, flavor-filled way. Like most of my family, that amidori compound isn't stable. It breaks down into dozens of smaller molecules: ketones, aldehydes, pyrazines, furans, and a bunch of other words that sound like things you'd find on a science fair volcano. Each of these compounds bring something to the party. Some give off nutty aromas, others deliver roasted flavors, and some just scream, "This tastes cooked in the best way possible." The sheer variety of these flavor compounds is wild. We're talking hundreds, literally hundreds of different molecules formed depending on the types of sugars and amino acids involved, the temperature, the pH, and the cooking time. That's why browned chicken doesn't taste like toasted bread, which doesn't taste like coffee beans, even though they're all riding the same Maillard roller coaster. The ingredients may differ, but the ride structure is the same. Heat plus amino acids plus reducing sugars equals flavor mayhem. Now, here's where it gets interesting, especially if you're trying to decide whether to use your oven or your air fryer, because while both can technically trigger the Maillard reaction, they go about it very differently. Your oven is like the chill older sibling. It takes its time, gently heating your food from all sides. But that can be a problem. If your oven is humid or the temperature isn't high enough, the moisture in your food sticks around too long, and all that potential browning gets sabotaged by steam. On the other hand, air fryers are the overachieving younger sibling with an energy drink addiction. Because again, they're essentially tiny convection ovens that blast hot air around at high speed in a compact space. This means they dry the surface of your food much faster, which is exactly what the Maillard reaction needs to flourish. That's why your air fryer chicken wings come out beautifully browned in 15 minutes, while your oven might take double that time to reach the same amount of crispiness, if it even gets there at all. Take our steak for example. In the regular oven without any prep, we got some light browning on the outside, but it's not exactly a Maillard masterpiece. The heat wasn't intense or direct enough, and the air's too stagnant to evaporate the moisture quickly. But in the air fryer, the hot air strips away moisture from the surface almost immediately, giving those sugars and proteins a perfect dry canvas to start reacting. The result, a steak that looks, smells, and tastes like it got a 5-star sear without ever touching a pan. But sear isn't everything, as we learned with the pork.
I mean, that's perfect. It's juicy, it's not dry at all. Again, because you have that nice crust on the outside of the air fryer, what I will say is that it does seem a bit drier than the oven roasted. Hey baby, would you like to try some of the pork? Tell me what you think. Claudia's trying to do work, like legit adult work, and here I am just cooking.
How she gets anything done with me forcing her to eat my cooking every 2 minutes is beyond me.
This one's way juicier.
It is, right?
Yeah, this is my pick for like without a doubt.
This is more flavorful and juicier for me.
What's interesting about this is both the oven and air fryer pork loins were at the exact same internal temperature. The difference between the two was the much drier exterior of the air fryer pork thanks to that Maillard reaction, which dried our mouths out with the first bite and made it seem less juicy overall. Whereas the oven cooked one didn't look as nice but retained all the moisture all over. The same concept applied to the sweet potato, where the oven cooked one had a clear visual difference and looked a lot more moist. Yeah, I said it, I hate it too, moist. But sometimes moisture isn't the name of the game, especially depending on your taste. See, me, I love me a nice dry cooked carrot. That's why when I compared them side by side, I realized I've been making a mistake for so long. I should be making my carrots in the air fryer. The oven ones had great caramelization, but the olive oil was still very much present. If you're someone that prefers that softer, more roasted texture, the oven is very much the choice for you. But if you want your carrots dry like me, the air fryer's high speed and hot air combo helps whisk away and dissipate some of the excess oil, leading to a nice, dry, almost crispy exterior. The other thing to notice was the oven batch had more burnt spots. We talked about the radiant heat and convection earlier, but there's a third form of heating that happens when you cook in the oven: conduction. That third one, conduction, is the spicy little culprit here. Your baking sheet gets really hot, often hotter than the air around it, especially if it's a dark colored or thin pan like mine. When the sugars in the carrots come into direct contact with that hot metal surface, they start caramelizing quickly, and then burning if you're not careful. Remember, sugar caramelizes starting at around 320 degrees Fahrenheit, but it burns not much higher than that, especially when in direct contact with metal. Since the carrots were in there for a long time in contact with that metal, the sides that didn't get shaken up when I took some tongs to them ended up burning. Since the air fryer cooks faster, it's sometimes a bit more forgiving on the sugary veggies like carrots. Obviously, this still comes down to personal preference, but for my own personal preference, I just learned I've been wasting my time putting my carrots in the oven considering how I like them. The air fryer is much closer to my liking. Let me know in the comments below how you prefer your veggies. With meal 2 done and eaten, I realized that the veggies and starches gave us the answers we needed. If you want that moisture, stick them in the oven. If you want them crispy, air fryer. When it comes to the proteins though, it's not that clear cut. So instead of a full third meal, I decided to cook the 2 other most popular proteins, chicken and fish, specifically salmon, to see what else we can find and see which appliance is best for each ingredient.
So we got our chicken out of the oven and the air fryer, and right off the top, you can see a big difference in the smaller chicken breast that was in the air fryer. You have a lot more browning. These two were actually about the same thickness, and this one thinned out a lot more, and you got a lot more crispy all around the edges. But let's see how that affected the juiciness inside. Really yummy. Let's compare it to the oven. In terms of juiciness, they're both pretty much on par. One isn't juicier than the other. That said, in the air fryer, we got a lot more of that Maillard reaction, and it lends itself to that little extra flavor that really kind of brings this home.
What was super interesting about the oven-baked chicken here was that the flavor and juiciness were both great. So if you're someone that's marinating your chicken, or you don't care too much about getting a crisp for whatever chicken dish you're cooking up, the oven is a great option. And salmon continued that trend and took it to an extreme I didn't see coming.
Whoa.
That was my genuine reaction with how juicy the oven-baked salmon was. Now, both were incredibly moist, don't get me wrong, but the dry exterior of the air-fried salmon didn't provide a, how did Claudia put it?
Whoa, this one's like juice explosion.
Ah, yes, juice explosion! The air fry, though, unsurprisingly, did provide a nice crunch in the skin and exterior. So, to recap, when it comes to proteins, if you're looking to really capitalize on the juiciness of pork or fish, the oven seems to be the best option. But if you're looking for that Maillard reaction to really bring the entire flavor profile together so you get that nice crust, then opt for the air fryer. Honestly, if I'm super rushed and feeling sacrilegious, I might start throwing my steaks in there after this. But what about finishing this off on a sweet note? I decided to throw in some pre-made cookies to see how the different methods would come out. There was a stark visual difference. The air-fried cookies were all cracked and less uniform than the oven, but when it came to the taste, we found that the air-fried cookies were extremely inconsistent. Some were baked to perfection, and others were still raw in the middle, but very crispy on the outside to the point of almost being burnt. If you're willing to take that risk for that perfect ooey gooey chocolate chip cookie, feel free to chuck them in the air fryer. But if you're looking for safe and reliable, that's what the oven is there for. After all this, I learned a lot about my own tastes and how each of these two appliances can help me optimize my cooking. And hopefully now you have a better idea of how they can help you make your favorite dish even better. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Buen provecho. And hey, if you don't want to cook and want to get delivery, make sure to click the link on the screen first before you order up. And as always, I'll see you next week.